Welcome to another episode of the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm Tom Shellcross. With me as always is Mark Ainley. Mark, we haven't recorded in like a week. Good to see you.
I know. I had to get in here a couple minutes early, make sure everything fired up. You know, I actually had an issue with my camera today, so I'm gonna have to get that fixed. But yeah, no, man, it's good to see you. I'm excited tonight. We got a Christmas party. I know that's gonna sound weird. This will probably air in January, but we're going to a networking event, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that'll be good. I get to see everybody. You kind of take these for granted, and then you get there and you're like, oh man, I feel so juiced after going to these events. So friendly reminder, everyone, get out there and network, whether it's, holiday parties or just a general Wednesday night, whatever. Go look them up. If you don't know them, we have an events page. Go check them out.
Yep, straightupchicagoinvestor.com networks. We're actually redoing the website too, so it's another announcement. I don't know if it'll be up and running by the time this airs, but we're redoing the whole site, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it gets me juiced up. This episode also got me kind of fired up. Just talking about some of these great neighborhoods in Chicago. Like the media focuses on all the bad, and like, man, we have so much. There's so much opportunity. There's just so many great neighborhoods here that you don't see in other major cities, and we're going to hit on some of those today.
Well, I think on the investor side, we always tell people, a lot of the general consensus is go deep in a particular area, or know your product, or know your neighborhoods. And I think it's same with the top real estate agents, the top brokers in this city or anywhere. They know a lot about specific neighborhoods, specific floor plans, specific blocks. Like I think in this episode, we even quoted specific blocks, and it's always great to have those people on to share that their very local knowledge.
Yeah, so I'm ready to go. So let's do the what's our housing provider tip of the week?
All right, housing provider tip of the week. I am doing a training right now for our team in the office, and what it's on is the communication around texting with residents, and I think we, as property managers, housing providers, whatever it might be, we try to be casual. And I think it's very important that even if you're house hacking, or if you have a couple units, you're self-managing, or other property managers, make sure you're always keeping it professional. I think drawing that line of professionalism versus being friendly, I think that you can be both, but also not make sure you're putting up the parameters of how you're going to communicate and so forth. So just be careful when you're sending those texts. They're only read the way that they are received by the other person. So make sure you're not being too snippy, too friendly, too casual, and just make sure if you keep professional, you'll always be able to. It lays out a certain expectation of what you're going to expect back from them.
So was there a certain text that was sent out that triggered this meeting? Did someone say something completely inappropriate?
No, not for you. Listen, I think what we run into a lot is you forget to say thank yous or we appreciate you. And I think some of that things and the professional side, I think also we abbreviate too much, or we use emojis. and I think that sometimes you don't know who you're texting on their end, and that I'm not trying to be age discriminatory, but us texting someone that's 55 or 60 years old looks at that maybe to be unprofessional or whatnot. So if you just kind of keep that line, I think that was maybe a bad example, but that's just kind of one line of just being consistent all the time and keeping it professional.
All right, good stuff. All right, our guest today. So one of the flips we did, he actually commented on it, and that was like a big deal for me because I've been following this guy for a couple of years now, and I was like, oh my God, Modern Chicago Homes. It said something about one of my projects. But he has sold over 600 homes, had a successful career in investment banking before jumping into real estate 17 years ago, has just dominated in some of the A+ neighborhoods that the city has to offer. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Welcome to the show. We're happy to have you here.
Hey, good to be here, guys.
Yeah, we are excited. I know we had a conversation a little while ago, and it's making this reality. So I guess before we jump into how you got started, you walk a lot of cool buildings in some of the neighborhoods that I really admire. Give us just a cool old school story, like some of these buildings that were built, 120 years ago. Give us just a little something before we jump in here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if people are aware that I think Charlie Chaplin used to live in the penthouse of one of these buildings right on the corner of Lincoln Park and Lakeview. I think it's called the Brewster Building, 2800 North Pine Grove. There's pictures of it online. If you haven't been there, it's got a really cool elevator, kind of an old school elevator. And I don't know if the penthouse was for sale a few years back, but there's probably pictures of it online. So kind of a unique historical building and unit that people can probably find pictures of online, and definitely, recommend people check it out.
All right. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. So Vic, before we jump in, like, just give us a quick background. And even from our brief conversations, I'm genuinely curious here because I don't know your background and what you did before getting in this and how you got started. So go ahead and give us that 2-3 minute overview.
Yeah, I've been a full-time real estate broker here in Chicago for 17 years now. We have a small team of 4 brokers. We do about $50 to $60 million in real estate sales kind of throughout the city, around the core downtown neighborhoods. I was doing investment banking and private equity before this. I worked at Goldman Sachs here in Chicago in a private equity firm called Prairie Capital. And I had a big interest in modern architecture, and I didn't see anybody focusing on that when I started in 06, 07, just from a brokerage angle. Back then, it was kind of hard to find modern design buildings. And on Instagram, I'm Modern Chicago Homes. I think that's how Tom found me. And so I just decided at one point that this was something I was interested in and other people were interested in. So I built a website in 2006 called Modern Chicago Homes, where I started showcasing some modern buildings in and around Chicago. And I kind of knew who was building them, where they were building them. And people started inquiring through the website, asking me to help them buy and sell these types of properties. So that's kind of how it got started. Over the years, our business has sort of changed. I mean, now we do.
Real quick, were you even
everything.
licensed, or was it just like, oh, I got to go get a license now?
I did go get a license in 06. So yeah, I was kind of doing it part-time, and then, it's the best way to start a business when you just start getting inquiries from the web and you're like, okay, well, here, the business is coming to me. And then I decided to leave my private equity firm. And then every 3-4 years, I've added on a team member. It's usually been somebody who's been looking for a career change. One of my team members, she used to work at Accenture as a consultant. Another one of my team members, he used to be a lawyer that I went to college with. So vetted some, friends who've sort of come on and joined the team over the years, and we've got a nice little team and shop running here.
Well, I don't want to gloss over that. I'm sure as time passes, it becomes less of a big deal or not. But you worked for a private equity firm. That sounds like no small salary you're making there, and you had to jump into a whole bunch of unknown. And a lot of our listeners, this is an important conversation because a lot of our listeners are in that same seat right now. They have this passion like you had, and they're not sure how to transfer. Like, talk to a little bit about like maybe some of the things that are going through your head at the time, or some of the things people in those shoes should consider.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the way things sort of worked out was I did one of my bigger deals at the time back in 07. It was like $1 million-ish condo at the time. So got a nice commission check from that. I got a nice bonus from my private equity firm that sort of tied into that. So, I was 26 years old. And at the time I said, okay, with this bonus that just hit, with this one deal I just closed, I had sort of $50,000 to $100,000 sort of saved up. And as a 26-year-old, you're like, okay, that's enough runway, even though it's probably different now. But that was enough runway at the time to say, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. And, luckily things just, sort of went up from there. So it kind of was easy for me just because I had the cushion. And I would say that's probably the hardest thing for most people who are trying to make, real estate brokerage or investing a full-time thing. You need to have, 6 months to a year of sort of just, funds in place in case things don't work out.
So
Yep.
What I'm hearing there, and it's probably true, because a lot of people have the hard time with the decision, but that decision just gets easier the more money you have to fall back on,
Sure.
and the more runway you create for yourself.
Yeah. So save a lot. Don't buy all that avocado toast.
There you go. That's all we need to know. That's enough knowledge for this episode.
Yeah.
So, well, Vic, let's hammer this home real quick though. As you're getting started, you're really focused on these A+ areas. Like I hear, I see on Instagram and I know exactly what I'm going to see. I'm going to see some beautiful graystones. Like I know exactly what I'm signing up for. When you first got started though, were you that focused, or was it, hey, like I got to pay the bills, I'll go out to, whatever, this suburb, that place, or were you always this disciplined in this, hey, this is my playground and I'm staying within it?
Yeah, given I started with the modern architecture angle, I mean, that was mostly in the city. I mean, it was hard enough to find that in the city. So then, and it was even harder in the suburbs. And then, given I lived in River North at the time when I started. So my business has always been sort of, I tell people, let's call it a 5 mile radius around the loop. So, and then, naturally my client base, having worked in investment banking and private equity, some of my network and my former colleagues, they all tended to be in these, sort of nicer A+ areas. And that just sort of made it a little easier when you have that network of people who, can afford the real estate that in the areas that you're targeting.
So you leveraged your prior network in your new career in order to kind of add value and get started. A lot of people,
yeah, I mean,
a lot of people think like a new start.
Real estate is everybody's a client in real estate. Everybody can be a client. So, so if you have a network of, people you worked with in the corporate world or before, definitely leverage them and use that as a stepping stone.
2005, I was sitting in a restaurant in West Chicago, and I was at a booth by myself, and the next table over was a guy selling windshield wipers to some auto part place. And I'm like, man, like I'm so lucky. Everyone in this restaurant is it could be a client of mine. They need a lease, they need to buy, they need to invest. And that guy had to like search so far. He had a limited list and probably lots more competition. So it's crazy when you say that. And it totally brings me back to that story. I had such a revelation that day.
All right, so let's jump into some of these neighborhoods here. So let's start with Lincoln Park, right? I think that's where and for those I didn't mention in the intro already, it's Modern Chicago. It's at Modern Chicago Homes. It's a great Instagram follow. Like, pause this and go ahead and make sure you're following Vic. But let's start with Lincoln Park here. Can you just give us the boundaries going north, south, east, west, and maybe like the 101 for someone who is not familiar, out of state? Like, let's just start with a high overview before we start peppering you with questions.
Yeah, so Lincoln Park goes from North Avenue to Diversey, so 1600 North to 2800 North, and then from the east it goes from the lakefront. It goes, a few blocks west of Ashland, although I think Ashland is sort of the informal cutoff for Lincoln Park. And that's another. So should we make the rest of anything west of Ashland, Lincoln Park, Lakeview should be called something else? Yeah.
They start calling it West Lincoln Park.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be called Costco Land. That's what's over there. Costco and Menards.
Yeah, if you're on the buy side, if you're on the sell side, I don't think that's sticking.
Yeah. So. Well, you know what? One thing that as a broker that always sort of, is a pet peeve of mine is you have these properties over there west of Ashland and the agents and everybody's, all of them say enjoy the best of Lincoln Park, enjoy, and you can't even walk to half the stuff in Lincoln Park when you're west of Ashland. So. Anyways.
Yeah, it's weird too. Well, it's not that many though, because like if I'm thinking about it right, the river comes in on an angle there, right?
Yeah.
So it only whether it's Fullerton or whatever that is, like it's only that little pocket there.
Yeah.
All right. So for someone, most of the people listening to the show are investors. What are the investment opportunities in Lincoln Park? Right? Like, is this like buying, do Greystones pencil out? Are we buying condos? Like if you had someone come to you, what's the 101 on, hey, I'm looking to invest in Lincoln Park, give us some strategies or potentials that might work there.
Yeah. And so one thing a lot of people don't know is just how big Lincoln Park is in terms of dollar volume. I was just checking yesterday, and I think year to date, Lincoln Park has had $1 billion of real estate sales. So a lot of people wouldn't be able to even, that's bigger than some small cities. So that's the first thing I would tell people is Lincoln Park's a huge neighborhood. And in terms of investing, I mean, I think it's one of the most desirable places to live in the city. So naturally, I think your returns, aren't going to be sort of what you're going to see in some of these sort of gentrifying neighborhoods. I think where you make the most money in Lincoln Park is actually in developing. So kind of, I know many of the developers who are working on projects here, and those numbers tend to be, probably the best. After developing, I think you need to really focus on, value add properties. Those are probably going to give you the second best return. And then if you're like a lot of people who say, I want to be the armchair investor, I want something that's turnkey, that's renovated, all of that stuff. Well, there's a ton of other people that want that same thing. So I think you're your returns for that type of product in Lincoln Park are going to be much lower. I think many people buy those types of properties in Lincoln Park probably at a at a lower cap rate, just because they know it's very stable. A lot of people will buy those with no financing. So I think that's another thing you're competing with in Lincoln Park is there's a lot of cash buyers. So even though, something may not pencil out, with a mortgage for a 2 to 4 unit building, there's people that are willing to buy that with a 4 cap or 5 cap, even in this higher interest rate environment, just because, they get some return on their cash and they're not as concerned about, trying to make the financing work out. So yeah, the where to make money is in development, then value add multifamily, and then, you can get some safe returns in sort of some turnkey multifamily if you can find it.
Yep. So on the development side, let's say you're knocking something down or doing a very, very heavy lift, right? Completely pivoting the asset.
Yep.
It's going to take you 18 months or 24 months, whatever that is.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and I want yours on this, like Lincoln Park feels like the place where it's going to be stable, right? The value is going to be there for you 2 years later, regardless of what happens to the economy. I don't want to say recession proof, but it's probably damn close. Like, accurate statement. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I would say if there's a desirable, I've said this, I haven't said it online, but I've said it to sort of clients is, to me, interest rates don't matter in Lincoln Park. If it's a good property, I don't care what interest rates are, what economy we're in, it's going to sell. So that's just kind of the environment that Lincoln Park is, that there's enough money here. The neighborhood is desirable enough that if you have a good property that's, kind of checks all the boxes for somebody, it doesn't matter if interest rates are 10%, 12%, there's still a buyer for it.
Got it. And then what do you see for the future? Call it 5 years out, 10 years out. Do you feel much of the same, up, down, specifically for Lincoln Park?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I think it's going to be, slightly above sort of inflation is sort of the trajectory I see for Lincoln Park. Obviously the city has its issues. People are concerned about taxes sort of throughout the city, and that, hits even harder in areas like Lincoln Park where prices tend to be higher. So I think you'll still outpace inflation, but, I don't think you're not looking for returns that you're going to see in sort of gentrifying areas where you can get, much better returns.
Lincoln Park's an area like I'm trying to think some other places, but like a Naples, Florida, where when you have these higher volume cash transactions, it means that the ceiling can go higher than it would if everyone's getting appraisals and getting mortgages. So sometimes you could buy something there, and just due to the demand that's not required to mortgage, you kind of create opportunity for yourself for that armchair that, in a few years it could turn itself around. So you might be breaking even today or losing a couple of bucks, but due to that lack of a cap or the opportunity for lack of a cap, it could turn.
Yeah, and one other interesting thing to note about Lincoln Park is if you're a multifamily investor and you can be near DePaul. So I have a client who owns a building on Sheffield that's near DePaul. I think that's also a good sort of tenant base, because those students are always going to be there, and sometimes they tend to stay for multiple years. So if you're thinking of investing in sort of something that's and you like that attribute, try to find something around DePaul.
Yep. All right. Before we get off Lincoln Park here, give us your favorite either block or little pocket. What's Vic's favorite? If you're going to go out and take some architectural photos, give us the secret here. Where are you going?
I mean, one place I always take people who are visiting is, I call it Billionaires Row. I don't know if other people call it the same thing, but it's the 1900 block of Burling. So from Armitage, I think to Willow, which is 1800. So 1800 to 2000 block of Burling. I mean, there's a house there for sale right now that's asking $25 million. There's been some sales on that block, that have closed for 10 million plus, and you just kind of get to see, what's so unique about it. And it's, heart of the city, but sort of you get to see some amazing homes.
Yeah. On that note, and we kind of glossed over this, getting listings there, how is that different than, up by me and, Portage Park, you might send out mailers, whatever, the neighbors, like, is it much more longer sales cycle? Like, do you know most of these people on these blocks? Like, just explain that, just compared to, I don't say the normal listings, but how's it changed as you start getting these higher dollar areas?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that's nice in Lincoln Park is that there is $1 billion of sales that happens, right? So one, there's just a large number of sales to go after. So it's, yes, there's agents that certainly dominate, some segments of the neighborhood, but I think the neighborhood is big enough. Again, it's like a small city where there's, there's room for everyone to sort of participate in it. And I think in terms of getting listings, yeah, you can do, we do a lot of mail marketing to some of the high rises along the lakefront. So those are, easier to sort of target just because you can hit a whole building with one mailer and get some return on that. So yeah, we still do mailers. I have a big Instagram following, so I get sort of client inquiries from that. But yeah, it's big enough that you can still use the traditional methods of mail marketing and that, still generates listings. But once people start seeing your name more and more, I think that's why some of the, brokers who sort of dominate some segments of the market, I mean, they've lived in the neighborhood for 25 years. So you see their signs everywhere, and certainly that helps too.
Good stuff. All right, let's move to West Town, which in my view is like 5 different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So someone says West Town, give us that breakdown.
Yeah. I mean, going from south to north, I mean, so to me, West Town, sort of begins at Hubbard Street. That's kind of where the Metro line is that separates Fulton Market from West Town. Although they're even calling some portions of Hubbard Street Fulton Market now, as it naturally progresses. But let's say
I saw something on Chicago called West Loop, and I was like, we're a little north here.
Yeah. So going from there, I think you have, you've got neighborhoods like River West, Noble Square, Ukrainian Village, East Village, and even Wicker Park and Bucktown, fall into West Town for some people, depending on who you're asking.
Got it. And then even like almost like to Humboldt too, right? The very east end of Humboldt, it's kind of jammed in there. At least listing wise, it is. People say it is.
Yeah, I mean, I would say all the way to California, which is probably where they say Humboldt Park starts.
Yeah. All right, let's take someone who doesn't know Noble Square. Give us just a quick rundown. Like, what would you expect there? I'm out of state. I've never heard of it. Give us the quick rundown. Well,
so Noble Square is sort of the neighborhoods that's immediately north of Fulton Market. So, I think it's a small little pocket from, let's call it Racine to Ashland, maybe Hubbard, going up to Augusta, about there. And what I like about Noble Square is we're already starting to see it, but it's getting a big spillover effect from everything that's going on in the West Loop and Fulton Market areas. So what's happening is either people are getting priced out of West Loop or Fulton Market, or they want a single family home, but they want to be close to Fulton Market and West Loop, and there aren't any single family homes available there. So what you're seeing is, big single family appreciation over the last 5 years in, Noble Square, East Village, Ukrainian Village, just because those are the closest to kind of the Fulton Market where all of the companies are moving their offices. So that's the big driving force that's starting to have an impact on Noble Square as well.
Yep. And most of this started pre-COVID. Like, how has that changed the game, right? Like, do you still feel the demand will be strong there? And, are people going to be going to those offices, et cetera?
Yeah. I mean, I think the companies that are opening offices there, they tend to be the premier companies, and I think they have enough. I think they have enough pull to get their workforce back into the office. I think we're starting to see that already. I mean, I don't know what the stats are, but some large percentage of people are starting to go back to the office anyways. And even if they're not going full time, I think there's going to be some hybrid model where people are going back, 2 to 3 days. So I think that's going to help. And then also, it's not just the office space over in Fulton Market that's having an impact. It's also sort of the nightlife and everything else around it. So I think even if you're not going back to the office, you sort of like to go to the nicer restaurants and the Michelin star stuff that's over there. So I think that appeal will still be there, even if, offices aren't as strong.
Got it. And just going back to the overall West Town, give us your sense of, do you want to be further south, right? Further to the action, like just price wise, as a general statement, pricing is going to be more competitive the further north you go. Is that accurate? Like, just give us some guidelines, some general rule of thumb.
Yeah, I mean, I would say one. Trying to think, because it changes. Let's see. So,
well, walk us through that. Like for listeners who don't know, walk us through that change.
Yeah, I mean, one of the investing sort of mantras that people used to use, and they still use, is sort of follow the blue line. So you know where the blue line stops are, and that's how you saw, Wicker Park, Bucktown, Logan Square develop. Now the thing about Westtown is Westtown doesn't have a blue line stop. I mean, they've got a Chicago stop, kind of where River West is, but that's a kind of like the southeast tip of the neighborhood. So if you're anywhere else in Westtown, there isn't necessarily great public transportation from a L standpoint. But I would say, the things that are important in terms of value there would be, can you be closer to the amenity portions of the neighborhoods? For example, there's a Mariano's at Chicago and Damon. So, if you're thinking multifamily, well, that's kind of important to people. Hey, I want to be able to walk to the grocery store. And then you think about the retail corridor. So Chicago Avenue is a big retail corridor that's undergoing a lot of change. And Chicago is sort of probably where, Division was 10 years ago. So you've kind of seen what happened around Division, in Wicker Park. And, it's starting to happen in Westtown around Chicago Avenue. So I would say those are kind of the bigger considerations. And then I would say being east helps. I mean, I think if you are anywhere between, Racine to Damon, I think those are all kind of like, hey, I can walk to stuff. I can, do my day-to-day stuff. As you start going west of Damon and closer to Western, you start losing access to some of the amenities that the neighborhood has.
What about the casino? What's the buzz around the casino for the neighborhood, or what effects has it had so far, and kind of what are your thoughts on what it'll do long term?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the casino is sort of on the outskirts of Westtown. I mean, I think the casino is going to have probably more of an impact on River North than it will Westtown. And at least my view is, I think whoever's building this casino, they know where they're building it. They know they're building it in sort of a wealthy part of the city or surrounded by wealthy areas. So I think when they build it, I think they're gonna build it with sort of, how can we also build something that the residents that live in this area are going to want to come to. So I don't think it's going to be, one of these casinos that you go on river boats. I think it's going to be nicer than that. I think they're going to have good public outdoor spaces. I think they're going to integrate it better than a lot of people think they will. So, I mean, we'll kind of see what happens, but I think it's going to be better than what people expect. That's my initial take.
All right. Let's jump south now. Let's get it on the other side of the tracks. Let's talk about the West Loop. Yeah. So obviously everyone has seen that just develop like crazy, but can you give us that brief history of what's happened there over the last 10, 15 years?
Yeah. So the West Loop, I mean, yeah, it's taken off in the last, I would say, probably 10 years. And a lot of it has to do with, the development in Fulton Market. So what sort of started the latest boom in the West Loop was when Google decided to build their offices there. And then since they built their offices, it was kind of a no man's land where they built them, but then stuff just started happening right around them. So it was a lot of these, 1-story warehouses that were there, and there's still a lot of those there. And some of the big developers like Sterling Bay got involved, Shapack Partners got involved, and then I think there's Fulton Market Companies got involved. So some of the big developers in the city, really accelerated that. And there continues to be a lot of multifamily there. You're not seeing too many condo developments anymore. And then you're still seeing Class A office. So that's kind of the what's happening in the West Loop is sort of everything is new. And you've got a lot of the big players that are focusing on it.
In your head, is it overbuilt, or are we getting to that point, or is there still room for growth?
I think there's still room for growth just because the neighborhood's not that big. I mean, if you look around the neighborhood, there's not that many vacant parcels left. Yeah, there's some of these one-story buildings that people are going to do stuff with, but yeah, I think, again, compared to Lincoln Park, I think the West Loop is tiny compared to Lincoln Park in geography. So I think there's certainly a lot of opportunity there. I think the bigger opportunity in the West Loop is, again, as the neighborhood stretches west. So right now, the neighborhood boundary, sort of the unofficial boundary of Ashland is kind of where the West Loop ends. But I think we're starting to see a push further west, kind of around United Center. And there's a big redevelopment of the Damon Green Line stop that's been going on that's supposed to be finishing up. So I think there's, multifamily opportunity in those areas if you can kind of be, hey, if I'm right by a new L station that can get me into the West Loop in one stop, well, this is where people are going to want to live once they can't afford the West Loop.
Yeah. Do you have clients looking on the other side there? I mean, I say the other side, west of the United Center. So, hey, I found something at California and Lake, right? Like, do you have people already looking there? And what's your advice to them as you start to get a little more in the I'll call it skepticism there? It's not developed yet.
Yeah, I would say, I have clients look there every now and then, and I think they're just looking for opportunity. I mean, there's potentially still some foreclosure deals out there that you normally wouldn't see. But I think over there, yeah, they're looking for, they're looking for sort of they have a much longer hold period. So I think they're not the buyer that's like 2 years, 3 years, I'm going to sell this thing. I think they're thinking 10 years, 20 years. I think they also have to keep in mind that, hey, for the next 5 years, it may not be smooth sailing. Just depending on your tenants and kind of everything you've got to deal with being a landlord, in some of these areas.
What are there any other risks of kind of west of Western that you see that you might advise people
on? I think one of I don't know if it's a risk, but it's sort of, you've got this big behemoth United Center. I don't know kind of what are the plans around that? I mean, are there plans that the city's gonna, or somebody working on, like, hey, let's try to turn this more into people right now only go to the United Center for games. You saw what they did with Wrigley. Kind of now you can go to Wrigley not just for the game, you can go for all the stuff around it. I mean, I feel like, I don't know if there's plans for it, but somebody should be working on, let's try to make the area surrounding the United Center more of a destination hub. But I don't know what kind of investment that's going to take. So I don't know if that's so much a risk as an opportunity. But knowing Chicago, that could take 10 years.
Well, there was plans as they're rebuilding Malcolm X College there to take some of the other open space and turn into more of a retail restaurant type hub over there. And I know United Center put that one side of the building on and connected it with the health center. But yeah, I know there was plans at one time. I don't know what happened to those. Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, I think that development would be good for the city if it happened.
Yeah, investors down there would be happy.
Yeah.
Is there any play with condos there for an investor? Is there any arbitrage between what you can buy it for, what you can rent it for? It's pretty much, most of these are newer, so it's turnkey. Like, is there a play there, or is the pricing outpace what you can achieve with the rental numbers?
Yeah, I think in condos throughout the city, investments become challenging just due to assessments. I think that's kind of the big thing. In a lot of these buildings, you have these monthly HOAs that sort of eat up at returns. So one of the clients that I have, who he likes condo investments just because they're a little bit more hands off for him, but he's also willing to buy condo investments where he gets, a 4%, 4 to 4.5% return on cash. Now that's not going to work for most investors, but I think that's what you're going to see for condo investments in areas like, River North, West Loop, or any kind of the downtown high-rise place.
Got it. You mentioned office before. Is that still going strong in the West Loop? Is that the one place where it's being less effective than other places in the city?
Yeah, I think if you look at the commercial market, they say, Class A office is sort of what's going to survive, what we're going through now. All of the Class B and other sectors are hurting. And then if you look at the West Loop, I mean, it's all Class A office. So I think they'll be fine. I think I think that's going to be fine there.
Okay. And then multifamily, is it more armchair investing when you're in the West Loop? Is it, hey, I'm just going to get my return, sit on this thing, or is there still more of the value add opportunity that you might see in other neighborhoods?
Yeah, I would say the opportunity for multifamily investing in the West Loop, at least the proper part of the West Loop east of Ashland, is very small. Just because there's not a lot of, there's not a lot of 2, 3, 4 unit buildings, and some that are there, I think some people have bought like these 2 or 3 flats and they've turned them into single family. So just because there's no single family there, so I think that opportunity is very small, if it comes up at all.
I think that's what makes the multifamily west of Damon so much more attractive, because it's like, you have to go all the way west of Damon to find these opportunities for the most part, at least more than one at a time.
Yeah. You're walking down Randolph, you're walking down Madison. Where's your must stop? Where's your go-to restaurant over there?
Oh man, over there. I like the West Loop rooftops. Like Nobu's got a great rooftop. Soho House, if you go with a friend that's a member, they've got a great rooftop. Yeah.
Yeah. Every time there's like negative news in Chicago, I just remind myself of like, sitting on one of those, like looking out like, no, the city's pretty good.
Yeah.
This is good living right here.
Don't believe everything you hear in the media.
Yeah. All right. So, playing in these A+ neighborhoods, how, we're getting reassessed. It's crazy to think almost a year from now, we're going to be reassessed again with taxes. How have some of your clients, some of your investors, the last time they got reassessed, did some of them take that, 150% type hit? And then what do you foresee in these neighborhoods this next time around as well?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think those reassessments are going to have an impact on property values. If your taxes go up 150%, you're not going to get as much for your, property if you decide to go sell it. And I think this goes back to, this is going to be a question we'll have later, but about what should somebody who's looking at buying their first property, think about? Well, make sure whenever you're running your numbers, you're running it off of, the property taxes you're using are going to be off of the price you're paying and not whatever the existing tax may be on when you're buying the property. But yeah, there's no sort of getting around the tax man. I mean, I would say you can, hire a law firm to appeal the taxes. I think one of the recommendations I give is if you are going to do an appeal, definitely include an appraisal with the appeal. I found that's probably been one of the best ways to actually get a reduction is if you have some supporting documents, like a formal appraisal.
Are you seeing cash buyers in areas like Lincoln Park that obviously there's a higher amount of cash transactions? Are taxes as important to them when it comes to those type of conversations, or their decisions? Like, it's money, but is that something that's coming into account when you're working with them?
It is, just because that's a cost that's not going to go away. So they factor that into their decision, and they, sort of weigh that with, okay, well, I'm going to have some stability in the rents here. I know, always going to have tenants, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it comes into play, but, and sometimes it impacts price, but, people, tend to figure it out, figure out how to make the numbers work.
What to you have a successful brokerage. You've been doing it for a long time. You've seen both sides of the real estate world when it comes to internet, before the internet, kind of the basic internet versus what we have today, the Redfins and the Zillows and all that. All these changes around NAR and the different compensation structures and them losing these lawsuits. What's your thought as far as brokerage in the years to come, or is there anything you're doing differently to kind of prepare for the years based on just how real estate, the way we do business, could change?
Yeah. I mean, I think my view is, that if you are a knowledgeable service provider, whether you work in real estate or any other field, you'll figure out a way to be compensated for your services. If you're adding value to the clients. So we'll see whatever changes there are to the way compensation works. But I think at the end of the day, the people that have been doing this a long time or adding value to their clients will be, paid for their services at a market rate. The market rate may change a little bit depending on how things get structured. But real estate brokers aren't going away. Buyers agencies not going away. And actually, I think in the markets that we work in, I think the higher ends of the market, like $700,000 and up, is going to be less impacted than I think if you're the broker working, the $200,000 to $300,000 deals. If your buyer then has to come up with a commission to pay you at closing.
Yeah,
gotcha. I definitely think it's going to. I think it'll up the game for the whole industry as far as the level of service and weed out people that aren't able to provide value and just kind of are showing a buyer what they got sent for on Redfin and just kind of going through the motions of a closing.
Yeah.
Got it. Vic, do you have any buyer horror stories? Inspection horror stories, walking in and all of a sudden, dead body, mold, anything cool to share?
It's not a horror story, but this is an interesting story. I had a client who bought his daughter a condo in the Gold Coast when she was going to law school. And then 2-3 years later, this was like the 07-08 crash happened kind of during his purchase. And 2-3 years later, his daughter moved out and we sold that condo. And we didn't know it at the time, but the person who bought that condo from us was the person who sold it to us 3 years before.
Oh, so you saw the pricing go down and say, I'll take this thing back.
Yeah, I think we bought it, he bought it for like $250. She ended up buying it back from him for like $220.
That's awesome. My first investment ever.
We still help her lease the unit.
That's awesome. My first investment ever. I tried. I sold it to somebody. Then they foreclosed her in 07, and I tried buying it back, but that owner occupied. I think I even lied and said I was owner occupied even to try getting it, and I still didn't get it.
Yeah.
So you kind of alluded to this earlier, but just overall view of Chicago, right? Where do you see the city? We have some headwinds against us. Next 5 years, next 10 years, how bullish are you on this city?
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing. When people say Chicago's one of those markets where you can't just say, how do you feel about Chicago just because we have all of these submarkets. Now, there are markets of the city that, I'm not bullish on. Those would be kind of like the downtown high-rise areas like River North, Streeterville, South Loop. And then there's going to be areas of the city, that I think are going to continue to see sort of development and expansion. And you're seeing that now with areas like Avondale. So Logan Square is starting to push further north and northwest. I think you're going to continue to see development along the Blue Line. I don't know if Portage Park, kind of where you are, is that in that direction. But I've been hearing Portage Park more just from people in real estate as a place they should consider. So I think Chicago is one of those where you can't generalize it. But there's definitely opportunity, in a lot of areas of the city, depending on what your goals are.
Got it. One more before we wrap. I'm with your buyers. What's maybe, something that typically gets overlooked or not thought of? Like, what's a gotcha that you almost have to share with each buyer going through this for the first time, saying, by the way, like, don't forget X.
Yeah. I think with whether you're buying multifamily or buying condos, I think like a lot of people don't understand some of the costs that are associated with like replacing big mechanical things in properties. So, you can have somebody that buys a $250,000 condo and then they realize they need to replace their furnace that costs $6,000 or $7,000. So I'd say that's kind of something that people should pay more attention to is, the infrastructure of whatever you're buying, what are going to be some of the deferred costs that I have coming down the road.
Yeah, they will wipe you out.
Yeah.
Especially when unprepared for it.
Takes away a year of returns. Yeah.
All right. Mark, anything else? Are you ready to wrap?
That's it, man. Let's wrap.
All right, let's do it.
All right, Vic, what is your competitive advantage? How have you been able to do this while so many others wish they could?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for 17 years and have built up a good network and have a good team. So I think that's kind of, in any business, whether it's real estate or something else, you need to be a good service provider, need to add value for your clients, and, really know what you're talking about. And I think I've been able to do that.
All right. What is the one piece of advice you would tell someone that is yet to buy their first property here in Chicago?
Yeah, I would say be wary of any pro forma numbers that you're presented with. Take those with a grain of salt. There always seems to be, a bit inflated. And then also pay attention to taxes, because the taxes will adjust to, the price that you're paying for the property, not what they may be right now.
Awesome. Vic, what do you do for fun?
I'm a big golfer, so I play a lot of golf. Not in the city. You have to drive about 40 minutes to find any good courses, but yeah.
Where's your go-to?
We go north a lot. I mean, I play Glencoe, I play Sunset Valley in Highland Park. And then there's a few other courses up north that are nice.
Nice.
All right. What is a good book, podcast, or self-development activity that you'd recommend to our listeners?
I just got the book Atomic Habits. I don't know if you guys have heard of that one.
James Clear.
I haven't opened it yet. I just got it, but that's going to be my book to read on my vacation next week.
It's a good book to start the new year off with.
Yeah,
Build some new habits.
Small incremental changes, baby. Just 1% better. It's very good.
All right. Besides yourself, name one person in your network you would highly recommend to other real estate investors here in Chicago.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know if you guys know, do you know Eric Flanagan from Marion Development? So he's a luxury builder now in Lincoln Park, Lakeview, but he's got a good story of how he got started back in, I don't know, 2014 or so in real estate, but maybe he's somebody to reach out to.
All right. Well, we'll link to him in the show notes, and then we're going to, off the air, we're going to ask you for an intro so we get him on the show as well.
Yeah.
So, Vic, thank you so much. You provide a ton of value to our listeners. I mentioned the Instagram handle at Modern Chicago Homes. Where else can they find more about you? And is there any way they can provide value to you?
Yeah, I would say just follow me on Instagram. That's kind of the easiest way to get in touch with me. If you send me a DM, I try to reply to all my DMs there. And if you need any help with real estate in Chicago, feel free to reach out.
All right, awesome. Good stuff. Mark, are you ready for the Chicago Fact?
I am. Today we're playing for Demetrius Snowdy. And Demetrius, if myself or Vic get this question right, you get a $50 gift card brought to you by today's sponsor, Straight Up Chicago Brokerage Team. So let's do this, Vic. When we get this for Demetrius.
All right, so here we go. We mentioned Lincoln Park at the beginning of the episode. So the actual park's over 1,200 acres. Goes from Grand almost all the way to Ardmore. Has 20 million visitors a year, which makes it ranked it's 20 million visitors a year, ranking it where on the most visited city park in the U.S. So all the city parks in the U.S., Lincoln Park is ranked where? And is it first, second, sixth, or 10th for most visitors a year?
I got to imagine Central Park is number one. So like, I think I would rule that out.
Yeah, I think what are the other big parks? Isn't there like Golden Gate a park in San Francisco or something? I would say it's 2 or 6. What do you think?
I'm going with 6. If you want to take 2 so we get hedge, then
let's do that. I'll say 2.
I'll go with 6.
Guys, that was very well. Good teamwork there. It's 2 behind Central Park.
Son of a gun. No way, dude. Oh, my camera. I got so excited. My camera went off. No way. I would never guess that. That's awesome, man. So we have the number 2 most visited park. I think I got a connection issue. That's my word.
Public city park. That's how it's ranked. This is according to Wikipedia, so obviously it's true.
It's definitely right then, for sure. that is awesome. All right, cool. Well, that excites me that we have the number 2 park. Man, Vic, thanks for coming on today. Tom, thank you as always. Demetrius, we get you your $50 gift card brought to you today by Straight Up Chicago Brokerage Team. Listeners, check out our Demetrius today actually was part of our Chicago fact contest because he left us a review online. So leave us a review online, share the episode. But if you leave a review, I throw your name in the hat and we actually manually pick that out of there to be part of the Chicago Pack. So check that out. Leave us a review. It helps us many different ways and you can be part of the show then. So Vic, thank you. Tom, thank you. Listeners, we'll see you next week.
Thanks all.
Thanks, guys.